say it's Unky Abraham for me, and he says, "All right, Nephi Adam, you're gonna have the schnip today." I wouldn't particularly, he'd have to be pretty sure that that's what needs to happen for me to be like, "All right, let's have it," you know.
Welcome to the Bible in 1 Year podcast, brought to you by two Brits and aBible. This is day 5, and today we are going to be covering Genesis 16, 17, and 18.
In Genesis 16, Sarai is barren. Her servant Hagar is given to Abram, who conceives a child, Ishmael. Genesis 17, Abram becomes Abraham and Sarai becomes Sarah, and we see the first circumcisions. And in Genesis 18, God tells Abraham he will have a son with Sarah, and Abraham asks about Sodom's destruction.
All right, let's get this underway, shall we then?
Absolutely.
It starts to get juicy around about here, doesn't it, really? Yeah. Let's just kick off with that.
I mean, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? The fact that, Abram has a barren wife, and yet the angel in Genesis 16:10 is like, you're going to have so many descendants that it will be too numerous to count.
Yeah.
Again, it kind of links to what we were saying yesterday a bit. Like, you can be in these dark places, these places you can't imagine getting out of, and God can just lift you out of them whenever he wants at any time. Then there's the whole controversy, really, of the fact that Sarai is his wife, and yet she loves Abraham so much that she gives her servant so that they can sort of conceive a child. I can't even imagine.
It's just the whole doing stuff under your own strength thing, isn't it? And trying to make our own plans, and often we end up just tripping ourselves up and getting in God's way. We're going to sort of touch on this a bit when he's trying to negotiate for Sodom and Gomorrah. But I've heard it referenced before, where it's like you have a kid trying to help you with a project, and it's like, yeah, you can help, but actually you're just hindering me. I'd do this way better if you weren't here. But it's not about me getting the project done, it's about my relationship, right? In this case with my son, or whoever that is for you.
Yep.
And we just need to trust God rather than go off and do it on our own.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And as you say, he's gonna get the project done either way, though. So even though Sarai messes up, and then Hagar ends up running away, obviously, right? But then an angel says, go back, it's going to be okay. And Ishmael ends up having some blessings himself, so he works through that sin, and he works through Sarai trying to work it out for herself, which I just think is great. Small note, just talking about sons, daughters, families, etc. Ishmael was 13 when the first circumcision happened. Now, one of my crazy conspiracies, maybe, I think that's why bar mitzvahs for Jewish people is at the age of 13. I think that it is linked to that same concept of that's when Ishmael kind of becomes a man, and that's the coming of age for Jewish boys to become men.
Yeah. So. And by the way, so God has promised all this amazing stuff to Abraham, or Abraham as he's becoming now. Mm-hmm. He hasn't seen anything at this stage. He's still doing stuff under his own strength, but he has such faith in God, and it's credited to him as righteousness, as it says. Such faith in God that he will willingly go out and get himself and all his family circumcised. That's a big step.
Yeah. If I was
go on.
Say it's Unky Abraham for me, and he says, all right, Nephi Adam, you're gonna have the schnip today, I wouldn't particularly, he'd have to be pretty sure that that's what needs to happen for me to be like, all right, let's have it, So you're right. It's his faith, and the faith that then transpires through his line, which is just very inspiring.
And that is, the very definition of faith is belief in things unseen. Absolutely. And obviously he hasn't seen anything. Abraham hardly sees any miracles like Isaac is really the only miracle that he actually sees. But his faith is just second to none, isn't it, really? To do all these things without seeing anything and just trusting that, nah, this is what God's saying. Oh, mate, that's heavy.
Yeah, it is heavy. It is heavy. It's amazing. So I'm going to call you out here a little bit because I'm looking at your show notes a bit. I saw that you said God worked down in increments. He also reveals his plan in increments. And then you've just put me in Africa. So
in Africa.
Not many people necessarily will know this about Adam, but he was actually working missions in Uganda for many years, serving God. And that's where he met his lovely wife, Melody.
It is.
And, I'm really curious to see what you have to say about this.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, many years 3, which to some people that's many years, some people that's a drop in the ocean, in it. But so this is surrounding the whole story here of, I mean, firstly, I'm going to sort of backtrack to get a bit of context in here. I'm talking about where Abraham is being told by God or by the angel or whoever one of these visitors is that he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham's trying to talk him down, right? And saying, what if there are 50 righteous people? No, okay, I won't destroy it. What if there are 40? What if there are 30? All the way down to 10.
Classic negotiation skills.
Yeah, right?
Yep.
He's like, no, if I find 10 righteous people, I won't do it. And it's a conversation. It's not God just talking. It's him wanting that conversation, that relationship with Abraham to get stuff back from him. But Abraham doesn't go straight in with, oh, how about if you only find 10? And again, I'm going to relate. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit all over the place here. May I apologize?
Okay.
But
we love it. We love it.
It's the same kind of concept of God ends up wiping out Sodom and Gomorrah. Spoiler alert. So regardless of how many, there weren't 10 righteous people, otherwise he wouldn't have. His word is good, his word is pure. So if there were 10, he would have saved it. He knew full well there weren't going to be 10. So what's the harm in negotiating? Similar to negotiating with a kid, right? But the way I've worked it, what I mentioned there about being in Africa is, for me, I spent 3 years in Africa. But if at the start I was told I'm going to go and live in Uganda for 3 years, I don't think I'd have done it. Because that's a lot for a early 20-year-old guy. But I went to Africa for 2 weeks. I went there for 2 weeks to do a mission school, absolutely loved it, fell in love with it, was like, yeah, I can see myself doing an internship at this place. And at that stage, I agreed to go for 8 months. I wouldn't have gone for 8 months unless I'd agreed to go for 2 weeks.
Right.
If at the start of the 8 months, someone told me that 8 months was going to turn into 3 years, same, I don't think I'd have agreed to do it. But it was agreeing to the 8 months that led me to agree to the 3 years. And I think God will reveal stuff to us in increments as well. It's not just going to be like, here's the whole picture, because our poor little earthly human brains just can't handle that. Correct. So God is pretty good with us and what we can manage and deal with. He will not give us more than we can handle. I think it's a classic old school saying. That's what I went with that. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And that was really interesting to sort of hear that. Yeah, man. And it's amazing to see your journey and the fact that there is these parallels. And I can agree with that as well. So just a quick thing from me as well, touching upon something that you said really about, what if there were 10 good people in Sodom and Gomorrah and stuff. It also just shows God's perfect justice, right? The fact that he would save the city if there had been 10 people. The idea that he's willing to meet us there and save them and make sure that they're okay. And that kind of reminds me a bit of Lot ends up fleeing, right?
Right.
And because Lot is righteous, he's told to flee and he manages to get out. So God did protect the 1 or 2 people. And so it just complements what you're saying, really.
Absolutely. Plus it shows the heart for Abraham of a man of mercy, right? He wants to save people where he can.
Absolutely it does.
Lovely jubbly.
So
that brings us to the end of day 5. If you have any questions, please feel free to visit our Facebook page, 2 Brits and a Bible.
Or you can email us at 2britsbible@gmail.com. All right, good stuff.